Yo, yo, yo. It's Dev. We have a lot of sports news to get into today. Some NFL offseason news, mostly NFL offseason news. Some NBA news, not too much, but as the season goes along, we'll have more news to get into about that, especially as the playoff picture starts to shape up. Let's kind of hop right into it and talk about a team that I don't understand what they are doing as a franchise, the Cincinnati Bengals. You would think as owners they've seen how monetarily good it is for your franchise when you're good. Once they drafted Joe Burrow, signed him to an extension, went to a Super Bowl, is one of the few players to ever beat Mahomes in the playoffs, and almost won that Super Bowl against the Rams. I'm sure that they sold so much in jersey sales, peanuts, parking, alcohol. They continue to just make mistakes as a franchise because the owners are incredibly cheap. Jamar Chase, no long-term contract as of right now. T. Higgins, franchise tagged twice. I imagine that those players aren't very happy with the position they've been put in. Not because of anything they're doing wrong. They are the two. I mean, Chase is definitely a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, and T. Higgins, a top 15, top 20 guy? And maybe it'd be different if he was a number 1. But if you're Jamar Chase, if you're T. Higgins, what makes you want to continue to do everything that you're doing for that franchise that the franchise isn't going to repay you for everything that you've done? They're not going to have any big players that are going to want to sign there. Move to a cold place. Play for an organization that doesn't want to sign players when they've done everything to deserve the contracts that they should be signed for. But these Bengals owners, pretty sure that their last name are the Browns, continue to make these mistakes, and it not only hurts the team, but it hurts their pocketbooks too. Because if they would have signed T. Higgins last year, they could have got him for what, $10 million less than they have to pay him every year now because they waited? Same thing with Jamar Chase. Imagine if they signed him 2 years ago to an extension. He'd be worth, what, $30 million as a wide receiver? And now they're going to have to go into the 40s because he is deserving of it. And he won't take anything less, and he shouldn't. But he would have taken less if they would have tried to sign him years ago. If they lose Jamar Chase, if they lose T. Higgins because those players don't want to sign there anymore, I know that they can franchise tag 2 more years after this, but they can't franchise tag T. Higgins anymore. They can't franchise tag Jamar Chase until next year. T. Higgins either signs long-term or he tests out NFL free agency, and there are plenty of teams in the NFL that would pay him a lot of money to play for them. They did sign Mike Gesicki. I hope he puts fans in seats. They also lose Trey Hendrickson because they don't want to pay any players. And as we've seen for decades, they've failed when it comes to drafting players. They hit on Joe Burrow and they hit on Jamar Chase, but how many players can you actually name from the Cincinnati Bengals in the last 30 years? The T-Ocho Show? Maybe the Red Rocket? It's probably about it. But were those teams successful? One of those teams went to the playoffs once. Definitely didn't go to any Super Bowls. So I just don't understand what the Browns owners are doing with their franchise. They're just kind of letting it slip through their fingers. Not paying players. They're not going to get big players to want to play there. And Joe Burrow is going to be left all alone if they can't get these contracts figured out. I mean, he's already getting killed because they won't sign offensive linemen. Their defense loses a couple players and Trey Hendrickson. But speaking of players that did get signed to big contracts because these teams know what they are doing, let's take a look at it. Max Crosby gets a big contract. $106.5 million with $91 million guaranteed, which essentially just means that he's guaranteed all that money. 3 years, $100 million. And he was the biggest paid non-quarterback in the NFL until we saw Myles Garrett get signed for $40 million a year. He's making what quarterbacks were making a couple years ago. Insane. Look at this top comment. It's not about money. I want to be a part of a winning organization. And then he just re-signs with the Browns. I should have seen through it. I didn't. I really thought that he was going to end up on a different team. And it would have been fun to see him on a contender. But I can't imagine he's going to be on any contending teams with Deshaun Watson's contract. $240 million guaranteed. They're going to be handcuffed until that contract expires. He's either been hurt every year or he's not been very good. Sucks to be a Browns fan. Sucks to also be a fan of a team that's owned by the Browns. Myles Garrett's definitely deserving of that money. $40 million. Any team would have paid him that much money if they had it in their cap space. I'm sure the Chargers would have. I'm sure the Patriots would have. I'm sure with all the news that we've seen, the Eagles might have tried to do something. I didn't see it through it. I really thought he was going to end up on a different team. But he'll be a Brown for a very long time. At least with Max Crosby, there's kind of some hope that Pete Carroll getting signed to coach over there is going to help that team out. Geno Smith signs there. We'll get more into that later. But they still need a lot of help. They still need to sign a lot of players. They need to hit with every pick in the draft, especially with the division that they're in. I don't see how they would ever have a better record than the Chiefs. The Chiefs continue to do it year after year, even when they have to lose players. Being so successful, can't pay everybody. You see that with every team that goes on to win and win and win year in, year out. The Niners, the Eagles, the Rams when they did it. You continue to lose players because you can't sign everybody. You have to pick and choose. And I'm sure that's a difficult decision because you essentially hire these guys right off the bat when you're drafting them. You watch them work day in, day out for your organization, make the organization successful, and then you have to sit there and say, you deserve it? Sorry, can't pay you. You deserve it? Sorry, can't pay you. Sure, they develop relationships with these guys, more so than just coach player, owner player. Friendships evolve. I'm sure like any one of us, we've been at work where we become close to our coworkers. We become close to managers. Not always. I'm sure it's hard when you have such good guys, such successful guys at what they do, and you have to sit there and say, hey, I can't pay you this year. Go pack up your family and leave. And we'll see you once a year maybe if we play you. I just thought that was an interesting topic when I thought about it. I'm like, if I was a manager and these workers are working incredibly hard for me day in, day out, And then I have to sit there and say, you deserve it or you don't. It's a hard decision. I'm sure sometimes it's pretty easy, but other times it's probably pretty hard. We'll move on from this. I want to also talk about the Eagles. Like I mentioned, when your team is successful for as long as it's successful, you will eventually have to let players go. You cannot pay everybody. The NFL practically says, this is how much money you get to spend every year. Divvy it up. With some players, you can kind of kick the can down the road and say, I'm going to pay you over this many years. But eventually it all backs up. You eventually have to pay all that money. And that's how uber successful teams like the Chiefs, the Rams, the Eagles, they have to let go of players that they don't want to let go of because they're limited. It's not the teams just with the most money have limitless money and can pay every player that they want to pay. And if they could, Jerry Jones would probably figure out a way to do it. But they can't. Eventually, they have to pick and choose. But the Eagles let go of Milton Williams. He signs for $26 million a year to the Patriots. He becomes the highest paid Patriot of all time on a year-to-year basis, which is crazy to think about when they had the players that they've had over the years. Tom Brady. It's probably the only person that could have made more money than that, but he always took a discount to make sure that the team was good. That's why all these teams try to be successful when they're on a rookie contract. Because so much money is allocated to those good QBs based on the percentage of what the team can spend every year. They lose Isaiah Rodgers to the Vikings. We only had him for 1 year, but I thought he played pretty well for the Eagles. Darius Slay signs with the Steelers. I kind of thought that was going to happen, especially because towards the end of the year, he kept saying, this is going to be my last game at Lincoln Financial. This might be my last game at Lincoln Financial. Josh Sweat goes to the Cardinals, $19 million a year. Kenny Pickett gets traded to the Browns for Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a fifth. CJ goes to the Texans for O-lineman Kenyon Green and a fifth, pick swap. And A.J. Dillon signs with the Eagles. They needed some sort of backup. They keep losing them over the years. But as an Eagles fan, I'm happy for these guys. I'm happy that they get to get paid. Am I upset that we had to lose some of them, especially Josh Sweat? I was hoping that we could maybe figure out a way to keep Josh Sweat on the team, but we couldn't. It's just not enough money. We did sign the player that would have been the hardest to replicate by putting another player in his position, which was Zach Bond. He was so incredible. But I think that with how good the Eagles have been at drafting defensive linemen and with how much depth we have on the team, I think we were hurt most by the secondary players we lost. CJ on the Eagles, not on the Eagles, on the Eagles. But every time he was on the Eagles, he was successful. Darius Slay, he was getting up there in age, but I've always been a Slay fan because he ended up on the Eagles when the Eagles were bad. And he won 2 Super Bowls with them, been to 3. But the A.J. Dillon signing, I didn't see. I knew we needed a backup. I know he'll be good for the Eagles, and he'll be good to give, Saquon a little bit of a break every once in a while. But that one I wasn't expecting. I figured they would maybe want to go with a player that isn't so similar to the starter. A running back who can catch passes out of the backfield. A.J. Dillon's a bruiser. I need a 4th and 3. I need it. You send him in there, run behind a big offensive lineman, and burst his way to 3 yards. But with the tush push, I don't see how he fits into the Eagles' offensive scheme. As with everything, we'll see how it turns out. I'm happy for all these guys. I'm happy that they made their money because they deserved it. Just sucks when you're a fan of the team and you have to lose players year in, year out because you cannot pay everybody. Saquon gets his extension. 2 years, $41 million. I'm happy about that. I am extremely happy about that. I'm so worried to buy Eagles jerseys because it feels like every player's jersey I own, they end up getting let go from the team. Just glad we'll have him for a couple more years. Cooper Kupp to be released by the Rams. They didn't want to pay a 30-year-old wide receiver. So they decided to let him go. Said, hey, even though you've helped make this team extremely successful, pack up your family and pick a different team. Kind of sucks because I thought the connection between him and Stafford was incredible. I know he's been injured over the last couple years. I just think it's funny when the Rams go, we don't want to pay 30-year-old wide receivers and then go and pick up Devontae Adams for $26 million a year. You don't think Cooper Kupp would have said, I'll come back for 20? Maybe not. Maybe that's why they let him go, because he didn't want to take a contract like that. Just think it's funny when teams do that. Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, Devontae Adams. It will be fun to watch, I won't lie. I really hope they don't let go of Sean McVay. I'm not a Rams fan, I just know how good of a coach he is. Every team would want him to be their head coach. On every podcast, his personality, who wouldn't want to run through a wall for that guy? I'm no athlete, but I would try. We'll see how the Rams turn out with Devontae Adams instead of Cooper Kupp. I know they still have Puka. But we'll see how it goes. DK Metcalf, another wide receiver, gets traded to the Steelers. The Steelers also pick up Darius Slay. They're making a lot of moves, but you know where they're not making moves at? They're not making moves at QB. I don't know what they're going to do. Justin Fields, no longer on the team. Russell Wilson hasn't been re-signed. They've made some big splashes. Kenneth Gainwell, not a big splash, but a good backup running back. Signed Donald Parham. He's a big guy. 6 whatever, just huge. But Justin Fields is on the Jets now. So they don't have anybody at QB. I don't imagine that they're going to get any of the best guys in the draft. We haven't seen anybody move up the draft board yet. Sucks to see Slay and Gainwell on the Steelers, but I do hope the best for them. That DK pick did shock me. I didn't expect DK to go to the Steelers. Kind of expected, I didn't see them as a super wide receiver needy team for a big player like that. Speaking of the Seahawks and QBs, Geno Smith goes to the Raiders to link up again with Pete Carroll. Sam Darnold signs with the Seahawks. I did think this post was funny because it does feel like that. Geno Smith is a little bit older. Um, Sam Darnold did have a good year, but I have a feeling that had a lot more to do with Kevin O'Connell than it had anything to do with Sam's individual talent. We saw how his individual talent helped him when he was on the Jets. And he was not very good on the Jets. Neither was Rodgers. But he was not very good on the Jets. Man, those years were tough for the Jets. They're still tough. Just felt a little bit better that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were on the team. Sam Darnold's going to have a hard time. I don't think he's going to a place that has as good of a coach as he did with Kevin O'Connell. Definitely won't have any as good wide receivers as Justin Jefferson. They lose DK. They lose Lockett. And so he only is left with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope Sam Darnold turns out to be the best QB he has been in his entire year. Sorry, his entire career. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I'm sure a lot of fans feel the same way. That the Seahawks were going to try to at least tank, get a good draft pick in next year's draft. But now they're paying a QB who had one good year with one good team way too much money. They let go of two of their best wide receivers. They don't have the coaching they had with Pete Carroll. I'm sure a lot of us would agree with that. Am I excited to see Geno Smith on the Raiders? Absolutely. Pete Carroll turned his career around. I was a Geno Smith fan coming out of college. I loved watching him play. And then he had some really bad years to start off. He had a couple backup jobs, goes to the Seahawks, and turns his entire career around. Now he's getting paid like a top-end guy. It will be fun to watch him on the Raiders with Pete Carroll, though. Tom Brady up at the front office saying, do this, do that. I can see them winning 8 games. If they make a couple more big splashes, maybe they might do well. But they would have to draft incredibly well. Another franchise that I see getting hurt by being successful is the Niners. They lost Talanoa. They lost Dre Greenlaw. They lost Charvarius Ward. Backup tackle Jalen Moore. Incredible story. Only started 12 games. And then gets a big $10 million contract a year to go sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. I hope it works out for him. But imagine only getting to pay players based on 12 games of experience or 12 games of tape. They lose Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. As an Eagles fan, I'm terrified of that. They've made some big moves. This is just how I was saying with the Rams and with the Eagles and with the Kansas City Chiefs. The better you are, especially year in, year out, you eventually have to give up players. You just can't pay everybody, but I feel like they lost a lot more than I was expecting to lose. Charvarius Ward and Talanoa, those are going to be hard to replace. They are incredible players. They're incredible to watch. And that defense was untouchable for a couple years. Nobody could get past them unless your name is Patrick Mahomes. I know Debo wanted out of there, and eventually it will come out why. I thought he was decently happy there. I really did. I know the Niners are gearing up to pay Brock Purdy at least 40 a year, somewhere around there, I imagine, if not more. And they're kind of handcuffed right now because Christian McCaffrey is hurt. He's got his tendonitis thing going on. I hope that gets solved because he's just fun to watch. He really is. But some other bigger news. Joey Bosa signs 12 years, 12 years, $12.6 million for 1 year to the Bills. I know the Niners offered him, and it would have been fun to watch both the brothers on the same team. But he did sign with the Bills. Josh Allen also signs an extension, $330 million. Woo! $250 million guaranteed. I can't imagine having that much money. He can do whatever he wants. He can go wherever he wants. He works 6 months-ish out of the year. I know they have to work out all the time. Camp starts early. But when you're the top-end starter, you don't have to. You don't have to show up to the early camps. You can just show up to training camp. He's already got the offensive scheme locked down. So there's only so much he has to do. But even if we all disagree that he will meet those incentives, talking about Josh Allen, if hypothetically he doesn't, he just shows up to work every day. They never make the playoffs. He never throws for a crazy amount of yards. He's guaranteed $250 million. That is generational wealth. His kids will have money. His kids' kids will have money. And that's if he doesn't do anything else. He doesn't meet those incentives. I imagine he will meet those incentives because the Bills are always good when he's behind the helm. Just crazy thinking about how much money that is. Even $12.6 million for 1 year is wild money. But $330 million, $250 guaranteed, that is essentially Deshaun Watson's contract. The only difference is Josh Allen's actually a good player. Deserve it of $250 million, and he doesn't like massages. Happy for the Bills. They're kind of figuring it out. Happy for Josh Allen. Don't know how Joey Bosa is going to fare there because I know they've signed some big defensive players and it always hasn't worked out for the Bills in the past 5-6 years. Hoping he doesn't just go play one game, pull a groin, sit out the rest of the year like he kind of has on the Chargers. We'll see how that fares. Let's kind of talk NBA news now. Only a little bit, some big stories. Kyrie gets hurt. Man, that sucked to watch. I was watching that game when he got hurt. He's crying. Gets up, shoots his free throws. Anthony Davis was already injured. Daniel Gafford was already injured. This is after the Luka trade happened. Incredibly tough to watch as a fan. I don't have a favorite NBA team. I just enjoy watching good players play good. And it crushed me to watch Kyrie get hurt, ending his entire year. I hope he bounces back and he's good. We've seen a lot of players in every sport have issues coming back after injuries like this. And I'm sure it's a little different when it comes to football. I hope that he can bounce back to the Kyrie he was before the injury, and I have faith he will. I just know I've seen plenty of ACL injuries watching the NFL over the years. It's happened plenty in the NBA where these players had the issues that they deal with afterwards. And it takes a minute to come back. Medicine's always evolving, so I'm hoping that they have better treatment, better ways to kind of limit these injuries, but also when they do happen, faster recovery time. I imagine that the Mavs are going to just sit Anthony Davis the rest of the year, even if he is healthy enough to come back. Why would you risk another long-term injury by putting a player out there? But Nico Harrison, I don't get it. Even if the Mavs sucked every year, I would have kept Luka if it were me. Fans buying his jerseys, coming to the games, paying for parking, paying for hotels, paying for alcohol at the games. You don't just let a player like that go. The only time they get let go is if they don't want to play there anymore. But that's usually the player's decision and not the team's decision. He's a top 5 best player in the NBA. You think the Thunder are thinking about letting SGA go? I don't imagine that they are. Let's talk some high-end standings when it comes to the NBA. Just the top-end teams. As of right now, the Cavs are first in the Eastern. Celtics are second. Knicks are third. Bucks 4, Pacers 6. Bucks 4, Pacers 5, Pistons 6. Were any of us seeing that coming? Probably not. They are kind of fun to watch, though. Reminds me of the Pacers of last year, where team out of nowhere just ends up being good. But as of right now, in the Western Conference, the Thunder are 1, Nuggets 2, Lakers 3, Grizzlies 4, Rockets 5, and Warriors topping the Wolves at 6. Let's talk about the two teams that have the best record as of right now. The Cavs at 55-10, winning 85% of their games. The Thunder 53-12, winning 82% of their games. I hope it's just me. I just have a feeling a lot of fans probably agree with what I'm about to say. When it comes to the Thunder being one of the 2 teams that have 50 wins right now in the NBA, I have a lot more faith that they will figure out a way to get it done when it comes to playoffs than I do the Cavs. It has nothing to do with their talent, nothing to do with their players. I love Donovan Mitchell. I just can see the Cavs getting bounced first round. The Celtics have always felt like the better team all year long. It could be because they just won the NBA championship. Definitely could be that. But I don't see the Cavs being actual contenders. They feel like a 38-win team right now. But they're 55-10. The Thunder, all that depth. SGA at the helm. Jalen Williams. I see them being able to figure out when it comes to playoff season than I do the Cavs. A a Cavs Pacers matchup, definitely a lot closer than it seems like it is when it comes to their records. They definitely would beat the Pistons. But if they happen to match up with the Pacers, the Bucks, the Knicks, do you really have faith that they'll beat them 100% of the time? Another injury that was hard to see was Wemby. Wemby getting hurt with his blood clot. Weird. Was not expecting that. I hope he's okay. I hope he can come back soon. I know he's out the rest of the year. But Chris Paul and him were fun to watch. Wemby is incredibly talented. Super tall. Can dribble like Kyrie at 7 feet. Imagine Shaq back in the day if he could go between the legs, behind the back, step back, hit a three. He may have been able to win championships on his own. He may have been a Magic on the Magic the rest of his career. Even if Penny got hurt, probably could have won championships. But at 7 feet tall, to be able to dribble between your legs, cross people over, dunk standing, with limitless range, that's like an NBA 2K player. Just bumping up all the levels. Luka is a Laker. The Lakers have been on an incredible win streak. LeBron is hurt with a leg groin injury right now. The Lakers. I'm not a Lakers fan. It's really hard not to be, though. I'm not a fan of any team. It's just really hard to not be a Lakers fan when you're watching Luka play with LeBron. Usually you can only see that during All-Star weekend with any of the top 10 best guys in the NBA. The Lakers always figure out a way to get the best players in the league on their team. Like when Steve Nash, Dwight were playing with Kobe. I know that team sucked because everybody got injured. They just always figure out a way for LA teams to have the best players. Same as me being a Dodgers fan. They always sign the best players. If you're an organization owner in a small market team and you draft a player like Luka, you draft a player like Ohtani, you draft a player like Patrick Mahomes, are you not doing everything that you can to make sure that that player stays on your team the rest of his career? Even if he's hurt every year, the team isn't successful. Just having him on your team makes your team money. I remember being the biggest Derrick Rose fan. And I still bought a Bulls ticket to go watch them play just to see him sit on the bench. This is after his MVP seasons when he was just kind of hurt all the time, when Carlos Boozer was on the team. I still bought a ticket, drove all the way down there just to go watch them play. Because that's what happens when the best players are on the best teams. I was talking earlier about how I'm sure it's hard as an owner to sit there and say, out of all these good people, who deserve it the most? When you have relationships with these guys, in the NBA, it's a lot different. Because there's a lot less guys on the team. So you're interacting with few guys. Why do you think Mark Cuban loved Luka so much? Still does. Still will fight for that kid. Still will go on every podcast and say, Luka's my favorite player. He doesn't own the team anymore. I'm sure if he did, Luka would still be on the team. He just knows how special a player like that is to an organization. And now you trade him away and destroy your team. Oh, and guess what? You spike up the ticket prices next year. I don't understand it. I really don't. I wonder if you just paid every player a minimum contract, if those teams would still make you money as an owner every year. And maybe that's how they're looking at it. We won't know until years from now when that GM gets fired or these players retire and they can sit back and say, so why did you trade Luka? And we'll get the honest answer. As of right now, they're just giving us the shitty answer of, we thought it was better for the team, for its success, if we had Kyrie and AD. Luka might want to drink beer and eat shitty food and not be in the best shape of his life. But he is the reason that team has been to the playoffs and been so successful in the playoffs every year. He just went to an NBA Finals with being out of shape and eating shitty food. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, and I apologize. I'm just so confused by that situation. Regardless, it's going to be fun to watch LeBron and Luka play for years to come. LeBron could play until he's 60. I know a lot of people didn't think he could make it to his 40s. It would not surprise me if he plays into his 60s. Another team that traded for a big star player was the Warriors. They're doing pretty good right now. Jimmy Butler seems to be happy again. The fit doesn't feel right to me. Jimmy's a guy that you give him the ball, give him space, let him get to the line. And Stephen Curry benefits more from movement, screens, scheme. Even though he can do what any other player can do, you can let him sit ISO and he can figure it out. But he has been extremely successful year in, year out by scheme, movement, getting open threes, even if it is from 80 feet. But the team has been successful, so I definitely could be wrong. It will be fun to see the Warriors, if they make the playoffs, see Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy, come out, making everything, being clutch, seeing Steph make everything and being clutch. I think that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, follow all the socials to see when the next episode's coming out. Everything is appreciated. And I will see you guys next episode. Have a good week, guys.